Child support in Florida is determined in order to allow the spouse who has the primary timeshare, and that's a tough word. In Florida, we don't really say primary or secondary. It's really timesharing. That's really what it is. And child support is designed to really give the children with the parent most of the time, that's the better way to say it, the ability to kind of enjoy the same or similar lifestyle that they did while the parties were married. And that's really the purpose of child support in Florida. There really is no advantage or disadvantage to either spouse when it comes to child support. Child support is determined based on statutory guidelines, based on their gross and net income. Each case is going to be different. It's going to be determined based on the amount of children, their ages, and then again, each spouse's incomes. So let's say, for example, it was a 50-50 time-sharing case. That does not mean that one party will not be paying child support to the other. One party still may be paying child support, and that child support still may be significant because it's based on their incomes as well as the amount of time sharing that each party gets. Child support is something that is required. It's not something that's ever meant to be, to punish one spouse or the other. It's just meant to give the children the best opportunities and advantages that they could possibly have as if the parties were still married. We often get cases where it's something called a post-judgment. So when something is post-judgment, it means the parties are already divorced. And usually when they come to us because somebody is not following the rules or what they're supposed to be doing. Either they're not paying alimony or they're not paying child support. Most of the time, they're not paying child support. In that case, it would be called a modification or an enforcement type of a case. And we would go through, number one, figure out how much that person is actually owed in child support. And then we would do a petition to enforce that amount. Usually, if it's child support, there's already an order on the books. We can usually enforce it pretty easily, unless there's something that has changed as far as like the other spouse lost their job, they became permanently disabled, so they can't pay it anymore. Even then, we will likely still be able to get that funding from somewhere. Legal representation is important when it comes to handling any type of child support case. Oftentimes you can pick up the phone and let's say if you've already got divorced and your spouse may be a month or half a month behind. Sometimes it might not be time to call an attorney right there and then. You can maybe pick up the phone, and as long as they make the payment, you're good. However, if it goes 2 months and maybe longer, it might be time to give us a call and let's get started because it's not an easy process. Usually that would mean that you have to seek what's called an income withholding order, and oftentimes it's not easy to obtain that income deduction or withholding order on your own. Each person that comes to us with a need for child support is going to be different. First off, pretty much every divorce that involves children is going to involve child support in some way. That child support is going to be based again on each party's income, but it could also be changed based on things like private school, based on things like the children's special needs, or any extracurricular activities that they had been doing during the marriage that might be included in that child support. Here at YAFA, we've seen the gamut. We've seen almost everything. And when you come to us, you're again coming to us with a firm that only does family law. So we're able to kind of really dive into that stuff. When you mention something to us about an individualized education plan, another attorney might have no idea what you're talking about. But here at YAFA, we've dealt with that all the time. We are a smaller firm. We've got 5 attorneys here at YAFA Family Law Group. And some of the advantages of having that smaller firm is that we can give the client more personalized attention. And this again applies to even the high net worth case all the way down to that flat fee consulting case. There's no kind of fly by night legal forms type of thing. This is every person that calls up to YAFA Family Law Group gets that individualized personal attention. There is a unique thing in the YAFA Family Law Group that separates us from, let's say, a different law firm. We have an in-house CPA. We do all of our billing down to what's called the lowest biller. And that might seem like it's saying the lowest bidder, but it is not. In fact, we do that to stretch the client's dollar as much as possible. If there's something that I can delegate to my certified public accountant, I will. Because when it comes to divorce, there's oftentimes lots and lots of financial background that needs to be kind of dived into or dove into. And for a sole practitioner or a larger firm, oftentimes they don't have those resources available, where here at YAFA Family Law Group, we do. During that initial consultation, the first question I'm going to ask you, do you have children? Then I'm going to ask you their ages. I'm going to ask you what school they go to, because those answers are going to determine how long you receive child support and if there's any deviation to the statutory amount that we need to take into account. I'm also going to ask you, how much money you make, how much money your spouse makes, and you're likely not going to know those exact numbers unless you have your W-2s or something like that right in front of you. But that's okay, because this is still just that initial consult. We're going to give you general ideas and say that, hey, child support will still be there. And I'm also going to tell you that even if you guys decide, you and your spouse decide to do a 50-50 time sharing, there's still likely going to be a child support obligation from one spouse to the other.